Um, we're going to get into a new series. It's called the Legend of Joe Jacobson. And the first time I heard about it, I didn't come up with it. One of my favorite pastors did. And I thought, I actually didn't even listen to the series because I was like, I don't care about Joe Jacobson. Like, I don't know who that is or what it has to do with anything. I actually skipped it for like a year. I ran out of sermons to listen to, and I went back to it, and I thought, oh, it's in Genesis. And it's about Joseph, Jacob's son, all right? And so it just took me a minute to figure it out, all right? So Joseph, Jacob's son, it's a story about blessing, misfortune, redemption. Misfortune, redemption. Misfortune, redemption. And so what you'll find is that almost no matter where you are in life, you'll find yourself somewhere in Joseph's story. And so I just want to, before we get together and before we begin and dive in, I want to pray for all those that aren't here, because maybe they're in a place of misfortune, or they're in a place where they don't want to be and they would love to be here and can't be. And so let's just start with prayer and we'll dive in. God, I'm thankful that that you give your blessings, and that in fact we're sitting here are blessed. That in fact if we're sitting here we're probably better off than the 99% of those that have ever lived ever on this planet. And so we want to begin by saying thank you. But Lord, we know that it doesn't always feel that way. That there's some all over the world, all over this city, maybe watching online, maybe even in the future watching this message going, I'm in a place of misfortune. And so we just want to lift them up now and in the future. We just want to lift them up to you and let them know that you are with them. And we're thankful that you are with us, even when it seems dark. And so we love you, Jesus, and it's in your name we pray. Amen? All right. So the question is, like, how do you live life when the circumstances of your life don't give you any feelings of warmth and joy? Because if you've lived long enough, you've been in those places. Are you with me? Yeah. So there's a story, like I said, Joseph, the son of Jacob, and it begins in Genesis chapter 37. We're going to be in chapter 37 and 39. Chapter 38 is a wild story that Joseph's not in. If you want to check that out at your own risk, all right? It's a wild story. But in 37, don't read it while you're here right now, right? You have to wait till you get home to read 38. All right, so Jacob settled, verse 1, Jacob settled in the land where his father had lived as an alien, the land of Canaan. And so if you know the story of the Old Testament, right, you have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then Abraham went to the land of Canaan, which is the future promised land, and they're there. And so there's kind of these three patriarchs of the Jewish religion, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so Jacob is, he gets his name changed. If you don't know the story, Jacob's name becomes, does anyone know? Israel, right, Israel. And so Israel means, and it's kind of a foreshadowing of the entire Old Testament, because Israel means he who wrestles with God. And it's like that is the story of Israel, and really our story, because we are the new Israel, the church, right? And so there's this idea that we wrestle with God, and it's the story that runs through Scripture. So in verse 2 it says that this is the story of the family of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers. He was a helper to the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. And so already, if you don't know Joseph, you don't like him, right? Because now what? Right off the rip. I mean, the first mention of Joseph is he's a tattletale, right? He's going to tell on his kids, his brothers, his older brothers too, right? So that's tough, to his parents. And so it's kind of strike one, right? And so in verse 3 it says, now Israel, right, this is Jacob, right? Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his children because he was the son of his old age. And so also, not just the son of his old age, but the firstborn of his favorite wife. Now listen, if you have a favorite wife, there's going to be drama in your life. All right? That's just a good rule to live by. You only want one, right? But he's got 4, and so Joseph is his favorite for many reasons. And it says, Jacob had made him a long robe with sleeves. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. And so it's strike 2, right? Not only is he telling on his older brothers, but also dad is not what we call emotionally intelligent, right? Enough to make sure that all of his children are loved equally, right? And so there's this dynamic that's kind of taking place, and it says in verse 5, it says, once Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. Can you imagine just the excitement he has probably telling them this dream? He's like, guys, listen to my dream. There we were, binding sheaves in the field, and suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, and then your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. His brothers said to him, are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to have dominion over us? So they hated him even more because of his dreams and his words. So that's strike 3. Let's go to verse 9. I don't know what sport we're playing, but I feel like there's going to be a 4th strike. I mean, that's bowling. It's a turkey or something. He had another dream, and he told it to his brothers, saying, look, I have had another dream. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, what kind of dream is this that you have had? Shall we indeed come, and I, your mother, and your brothers, and bow to the ground before you? So his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. And so he is not well liked by his family, right? But he's 17. You know what I mean? He's a kid. He's a kid, less of a kid than our 17-year-olds, but you know, in that time you're a little more responsible. It had a lot to do. Obviously, he's walking throughout the land, looking over as his older brothers and reporting back, and so it's not going well. But even his dad, who loves him, is a little bit perturbed by his son Joseph. And have you ever looked back at your younger self and thought, man, I was stupid? Right? I mean, and listen, and now in the world of social media, like Facebook reminds you of how stupid you were 10 years ago, right? It would just be like, look what you said 10 years ago. I'm like, oh God, delete, move to trash, whatever I got to do. It's like now, the thing about that is, what's odd is like even thinking like in like the next 15 years, like we're gonna have a president that was on Twitter when he was 20. You know what I mean? Like, and we're going to see all of that stuff kind of pop up. It's like we are not, hopefully we are smarter now than we were 10 years ago. And so there's a book that I was given when I was 16. It was How to Win Friends and Influence People. Ever heard Dale Carnegie, right? It's an oldie but a goodie, and it's still got a lot of good stuff in it. But it references people like Theodore Roosevelt, all right? So one of his passages, he said this. He says, when Theodore Roosevelt was in the White House, he confessed that if he could be right 75% of the time, that he would reach the highest measure of his expectation. If that was the highest rating, this is what Dale says. He says, if that was the highest rating that one of the most distinguished men of the 20th century could hope to obtain, what about you and me? If you can be sure of being right only 55% of the time, he said, you can go down to Wall Street and make $1 million a day. So if you can't be sure of being right even 55% of the time, why should you tell other people how wrong they are? And I say that to say this. If we know that we were stupid 10 years ago, and we can look on contempt to a degree with our 10-year younger self, what are the chances that in 10 years our future self will look at some of the stuff that we think right now and go, that was rough, dog. That was rough. We are always learning, and so we have to operate in a way. And I think Joseph, listen, he's going to have a lot of time to think here in the short future. We're going to get to it. I imagine there's going to be times where he looks back and goes, man, I was kind of dumb. I was kind of dumb. And sometimes, even if we're not in a situation that's not our fault, sometimes we could even sometimes it's actually a good thing to find out how we were a part of our own pain. Even if it's a little bit. Even if maybe we want to blame other people, to find out how we could be a part of our own pain is a healthy way to strengthen our resolve and to be better people. And so in verse 12 it says, now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, right, that's Jacob, are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them, he answered. Here I am. So clearly Jacob likes this whole telling on the brothers thing, right? And so he said to them, go now, see if it is well with your brothers. The word there is shalom. See if it is peace with them, with your brothers and the flock, and bring word back to me. And so he sent him from the valley of Hebron. And so here's what we know from the passage as readers, right, that maybe they're not super familiar with yet. We're aware of the hatred that the brothers have, right, because we've been reading about it. But clearly, Jacob and Joseph are oblivious, right, because they're still doing it. They're still like, we're going to still do this. I'm going to send you out. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to go tell my brothers again. And they love it when I do that. And this is going to be great. And so he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields. The man asked him, what are you seeking? Well, I'm seeking my brothers, he said. Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock. And the man said, they have gone away, for I heard them say, let us go down to Dothan. And so Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from a distance, and before he came near to them, they conspired to kill him. They said to one another, here comes this dreamer. Now come, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we shall say that a wild animal has devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. But when Reuben heard it, he delivered him out of their hands, saying, let us not take his life. It's like every story needs a hero, you know? Every story needs someone that's going to stand up to the crowd, and it's like, you know, thank God for Reuben, because I'm sure he is going to save the day, right? He's the oldest. He's the one that's supposed to be in charge, and the leader of his brothers, the one that's going to take over the family fortune. You know, right? He's supposed to be the guy, so clearly he's going to stand up and do a good thing, right? He's going to try. So Reuben said to them, verse 22, shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but lay no hands on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand and restore him to the father. And so Reuben's trying to play both sides, right? He's going, okay, let's not kill him. Let's put him in a pit, and then I'm going to circle back around later, and I'll get him out, and we'll go back to dad, right? And it's not an awful idea, but it's not a great one, right? He's the one that's supposed to, he has the ability, right? He's the oldest. He's the one that has the right, he's been given that type of leadership by being the oldest to say, no, we're not doing this. We're going to do what's right. We're going to do the right thing. He's 17 years old, guys. Right, we're gonna kill a guy because he's a 17-year-old, what, because he tells on us when we're screwing off, right? And because dad likes him a lot for it. It's like, is that extreme? Maybe. He's just a dumb kid. One of my favorite authors, and you probably get sick of hearing about him, Jordan Peterson. He says he wrote a book that I would argue probably saved my life at one point, and it said in one of his rules, it's called the 12 Rules for Life. He says, always tell the truth, but at least don't lie. Always tell. So, like, what does that mean? It's like, well, we don't always know the truth, right? We think we do sometimes. We don't always know what absolute truth is, but we know when we're lying, right? You know when you're actually lying. And so Reuben is lying. He's trying to twist the fabric of reality. He's trying to be deceitful, right? He's trying to sneak away into saving this thing without just being forthright and honest about what he wants. He's trying to, and here's the thing about lying, is, and I've said this before, it's like trying to bend a ruler back. And you just keep bending and bending and bending. And listen, you can't break reality. You get away with nothing. Everything comes back in some way or another. And so you bend and bend and bend. And the further you try to bend reality, the harder it snaps back and smacks you in the face. And so he's trying to bend this reality. He's trying to do something. He's trying to be deceitful for a good reason. And it's like, I kind of understand, but it doesn't tend to work out. For all the good Reuben is trying to do by being deceitful, it doesn't solve the problem. So verse 23. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the long robe with sleeves that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels carrying gum, balm, and resin, and on their way to carry it down to Egypt. And then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood?" They're like, you know what? We're not going to make any money off killing him. We can come up with something. We can be more creative. And Judah said to his brothers, he said, "Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him, for he's our brother, our own flesh." Right? It's like, we can't kill him, he's our brother. Let's just sell him into slavery. And his brothers agreed. It's a wild story, y'all. When some Midianite traders passed by, they drew Joseph up, lifting him up out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they took Joseph to Egypt. Now, verse 29. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes. We have to live. We have to live with every decision that we make. What you want, at the very least, is reality to be on your side. Right? And so Reuben doesn't have it. He's been lying. He's deceitful. And so, listen, when we make decisions, the difficulty, because sometimes we lie because we don't want to feel bad in the moment. We don't want to deal with the consequences in the moment. We lie because we want to push them off in reality, right? We're pushing them off. And so what you would rather have when things go bad is to know that you at least have the truth on your side. That you can at least say, I know what I did, and I did what I thought was right at the time, right? Because listen, if God is truth, and Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. When you have the truth on your side, you have God on your side. But moment. And so he returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where can I turn?" Then they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. And so one lie begets another. And they had the long robe with sleeves taken to their father, and they said, "This we have found. See now whether it is your son's robe or not." He recognized it and said, "It is my son's robe. A wild animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." And so Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. His sons and all his daughters sought to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning." And thus his father bewailed him. Listen, I pray that I never know that pain. But we live in a world where we know people who have experienced that pain, and that is not a... He says, "I'm going to mourn him till I die." But what I can't fathom is the heartlessness that it would take to watch your father be broken into pieces over something you know is a lie. That you could, even if they wanted to comfort him, it's like they're saying they were comforting. It's like, no, you weren't comforting, you were lying still, pretending to come, "Oh, your son, he's dead." It's like, no, he's not. We know exactly where he is. We sold him off. Like, so if you really wanted to comfort him, you just go, "Nah, we're going to go fix this. We're going to go solve the problem. We're going to go find him and bring him back," right? So Instead, they choose to live life. They choose to live in bent reality for the rest of their life, knowing they've hurt the people closest to them out of their own selfish desires. So jump to chapter 39. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. The Lord, what did that say? The Lord was with him so that he prospered. What do you mean he prospered? Was being thrown in a pit? Prospering? Was being sold into slavery? Was that prosperity? Was that, it's like, God, if you're with me, maybe don't be with me, right? It's like, that's I'm not prospering. I'm not benefiting. You're not with me. No one's with me. I'm actually alone. You know, there's some things in my life that when I look back on, I think, I can't believe I did those things. And I would never do them again. But then I think about where God has placed me now. And I think about a relationship that me and my wife have now. And we would never choose to go through what we went through. But I can't reconcile how it works that God has put me in this place and has blessed me in this moment. Because listen, there was times when I left my last church, I had started a new career in construction. And there were times when, I was working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, 2 hours from home. That's a long day. And I would find myself in porta-johns having anxiety and overload, chain smoking cigarettes, and just thinking, I don't know how I got here. I don't know what happened, but I know God's not with me. And within 6 weeks, they had put me in charge of my own little crew of new-to-construction workers. And I thought, well, at least I'm worth something, you know? And then when I went to my next construction job, I was still in deep depression, deep depression. I was walking between two large buildings with cranes bringing steel over top and horns blaring whenever they would bring the steel over you so that you knew that there was something heavy above you. And I would find myself with tears so heavy in my eyes that I couldn't safely walk because I didn't know where holes were, where things were, and I would just be frozen in the middle of this massive construction site. God, you're not with me. But he put me in a place with three guys that I still talk to on a regular basis that spoke truth, that taught me the construction field. And within a year, I was the only apprentice that had ever skipped a year of apprenticeship school because of what those guys did for me. That's not the prosperity I was looking for. That's not what I thought when I said God was with me that I wanted. You see, when you're in the pit, when you feel like you've been sold out, it isn't about the kind of prosperity you want. It's about the kind of prosperity you need. The kind of prosperity that God knows you need. See, God is with you doesn't mean everything will work out the way that you want it to. God is with you simply means that you have the truth on your side and you aren't alone. In that pit, in that porta-john, in the middle of that field, losing your mind. When you do what is right and you make the proper sacrifices, when a door opens, you will be able to walk through it. And so there's a passage in Matthew 5, verse 45. It says that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. I used to think that passage was about him sending pain, that the righteous and the unrighteous experience pain. But rain's actually a blessing for these folks. And so it's actually, God sends blessing on the righteous and the unrighteous. And so even if you are in a pit and it's your own fault, there's times that God sends rain and he sends blessing on you. And it's a reminder that you're not alone, that you're not done, that if you keep stepping forward, keep walking forward, keep marching, keep telling the truth and doing the right things, that when the door opens, you're able to walk through it. And that's really all you can ask for. And so I'll just close with this, and we'll sing a song and worship. Verse 3 says, when his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in the eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food that he ate. And so I don't know where your life is right now. I don't know if you're in a pit or you're on top of a mountain. But I just want you to remember that you don't know everything there is to know right now. There's some things we're going to learn. Tell the truth, but at least don't lie. And put your best foot forward, even if you're not where you want to be right now. All right. Blessings, church.